I see Maria, so we're all good.
Great.
I mean, and my co-hosts, and we're going to be right on time. That's awesome. Thank you.
Perfect. Yes. I know
Awesome.
technical issues always make us anxious. So I've been feeling that way all morning because some of the links weren't working. So I'm happy.
And are you going to make me host, or are you going to make me co-host?
I can make you a co-host. How about that?
Yeah, once you do that, then I can make Sarah and Maria also co-hosts, or you can make them all co-hosts.
There you go. Yeah, I will. So you're a co-host now, and Maria's a co-host now.
Like Sarah is as well.
Yeah. So I will just leave you to it, and thanks.
Fabulous. Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate that. All righty.
Hopefully everybody had a good break and we're feeling ready. There's a lot to share and learn, but we're excited for your session.
Great, thank you. We'll get started in just a second here. I just need to re-find all of the appropriate files here, but I think we are ready to go. So let me try to share screen. First of all, we want to welcome you. I think I'll go ahead and introduce our presenting team today. Thank you so much for coming to our session. My name is Soleste Hilberg, and I'm with UC Santa Cruz. I'm the Director of Teacher Education, and I'm here with two of my colleagues today, and I'll let them introduce themselves. First, Sarah, and then Maria.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. It is a pleasure to be here with all of you. My name is Sara Sanchez, pronouns she, her, and ella. And at UC Santa Cruz, I work with our HSI initiatives with the Ganas graduate programs as the Ganas graduate program director. Maria?
Thank you, Sara. Good morning, everyone. My name is Maria Fernanda Alcantara. My pronouns are she, her, ella, and I serve as a project consultant to the HSI Hispanic Serving Institution Initiatives team at UC Santa Cruz.
Awesome. Thank you so much, both of you. I am now going to share my screen. The session that we're doing today, we're calling it Racial Affinity Group Networking through the UC Santa Cruz LIFT program, and LIFT stands for Latinx Initiative for Future Teachers. So just give me one moment. Here I go. I think we're good. So I'm just going to rearrange my screen. Once I share screen with the Zoom, then it rearranges my screen for me, which is fine as long as I can find everything. Before I just want to make sure I can see the participants in the chat. Donita, thank you for letting us know. I hope I pronounced your name right. We have no problem if you're having technical difficulties or challenges. We get it. Happens all the time, especially during the summer when we're at home and maybe our network isn't as strong as it is when we're on campus. Very good. So I'm gonna advance my screen. I'm not even sure. Oh, here it is. Okay, so we're going to start with the land acknowledgement, and we know that we're all in different places in California, but we are located here in Santa Cruz, and Sarah is going to share our local land acknowledgement. Thank you.
Yes, and in particular, myself, I am at UC Santa Cruz, so I will share the UC Santa Cruz land acknowledgement. And I invite you all to acknowledge the Indigenous people from the land where you are. You can do that in the chat if you wish. The land on which we gather is the unceded territory of the Awas speaking Wipi tribe. The Amamutsan tribal band, comprised of the descendants of indigenous people taken to Mission Santa Cruz and San Juan Bautista during Spanish colonization of the Central Coast, is today working hard to restore traditional stewardship practices on these lands and heal from historical trauma.
Thank you, Sarah. I appreciate that. And as Sarah said, she invited everyone to go ahead and put over in the chat, if you wouldn't mind, a land acknowledgement, and just let us know where you're from. And if you don't know the Indigenous folks in your area, please just let us know where you're zooming in from today. Thank you so much, Lisa. Appreciate that. She is on the Patwin territory. I'm not sure I pronounced that right. We've got folks from UC Riverside, Owaswas. Dana, thank you. That's our local. Antonitas with the Chumash Central Coast area. Eduardo, the Tongva. This is awesome. Dr. Taylor is in Sacramento, and Eduardo Lopez is in UCLA. Evelyn, thank you. I am not going to try to pronounce that. Akjahman and Tongva. you want to jump in and tell me how to pronounce that. Awesome. And Stephanie, I'm not sure, but I think it sounds like you're zooming in from Orange County. Awesome. Thank you so very much. Well, we're excited to get to share with you the work that we're doing today. And we're very much mid-cycle. We're very much in progress, but we're going to talk a little bit about what we've learned, and we're hoping to learn from you as well today, but also to brainstorm some ideas with you about where we can go next with our program, and hopefully talk about ways that you can do some similar work in your areas as well. And then Sarah, I'm sorry, you also wanted to.
Before we get to those details, portions of this presentation were developed under a grant from the Department of Education. However, they do not necessarily represent the policy of the Department of Education, and you should not assume endorsement by the federal government. And we'll talk a little bit more about our grant in a few slides.
Thank you very much. So we have three parts to our presentation today. We're going to start by sharing with you what we've learned from the research literature on affinity grouping in teacher education. And then we're going to talk about our own personal unfolding story here at UC Santa Cruz. And then we want to engage you in a discussion activity and try to elicit your incredible insights about how we can move forward. So I wanted to start by providing a rationale. Why is it important to be thinking about racial affinity networking? So a couple of key points that really jumped out to me from the literature as a reason for why this work is really important. We're all involved in teacher education. We're all involved in supporting pre-service teachers, and we are undoubtedly all involved in supporting pre-service teachers of color. And yet what we know from the research is that teachers of color, while we might be supporting them to obtain their teaching credential, what we also need to know how to do is support them to be successful and to stay in the profession. And teachers of color currently are leaving the profession at a higher rate, 24% higher than their white colleagues. An additional reason why this work is really important is that a study that was done by one of our colleagues, actually a graduate, a PhD student from UC Santa Cruz, who's now working at, I believe, USF. Her last name is Pork-Rushad. And what she found out is that teachers of color who are committed to social justice are often unsupported in their first years of teaching, and they're often actually pushed out of the profession. And I feel like I have some anecdotal evidence of that even locally. So those are two really important reasons as to why it's really important for us to learn about how to support our students of color, and one of those ways being providing structures for affinity group networking. So we asked the question, why is this happening? And what are some interventions? What does research tell us about what are some things that we can do? So Sarah has the next slide.
Yeah, to contextualize this a bit more, there is what I'll talk about is racial battle fatigue. So coming these citations and this information from an article by Pizarro and Coley from 2020. But define racial battle fatigue is the psychological, emotional, and physiological, so what we actually experience in our bodies, physiological toll of confronting racism. Often in the teaching classroom school context, the teachers of colors will feel that there is no escape from the racism that they experience or that they see their students experiences, but at the same time, there is little to no acknowledgement of that this is happening or that this is existing. For teachers of color, this often means for them that they are constantly confronting, challenging, often trying to educate others, bring them along, have them see what the wrongs are that are happening, and often having to do it alone, right? Feeling a big pressure that they also acknowledge as having to be the school superhero, taking all of this extra work and really heavy emotional labor on. In their experiences, these teachers are also constantly on high alert, just expecting on their toes that there'll be another racist encounter at any given time for them directly or again in the environment that they're working in. And so related to that also, they're hypervigilant in their work, what they produce, their lessons, etc., because they don't want to be again, targeted for unnecessarily so, for how they're doing their work or what they're presenting on, right? They don't want to give another reason to be attacked. So again, these are obviously resulting in constant feelings of stress, additional demands, and as was mentioned in the previous slide, ultimately the teachers are leaving the schools, right, at high, and especially the citation rate, 25% more likely for teachers of color to leave than their white colleagues.
Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate that. And then I have the next slide. So basically, some of the research that I looked at talked about what are some of the concerns. And as Sarah said in the last slide, there's this constant state of high alert for what is that next racist encounter, but also the stress that's encountered by teachers of color. Oftentimes, I think especially to those of us who are white in a mainstream white culture, we don't realize what's happening to those around us. And I think that happens in our classrooms as well. And as much as we in our program talk to all of our students about the importance of careful and thoughtful listening and being aware of our own biases, when we engage in our end of year feedback and our end of year focus group, we inevitably get different kinds of responses from our students of color than we get from our white students. And I think that it's really just that it's so invisible to many of us, what's happening in the experience, and then also how we're actually engaging with others. So it's really, I think, we need to work together to try to find solutions, but we also need to elicit from our students and our colleagues their own personal experiences. So the stress leads to loss of confidence and then also decreased motivation. And then hence this is possibly leading or contributing to the factor that teachers of color are leaving at a higher rate. And so also, so what does the research tell us? What are some possible solutions? And so they talk about the really importance of individuals finding a network of allies and supporters and how critical that is, especially to activist teachers, so that they can talk about the situations that are arising, talk about solutions, but also get that social emotional support that's so much needed. And then also one of the things that they talk about in the literature is that really just having an enhanced racial literacy is really important to our students of color, because oftentimes I think people aren't able to articulate or come to terms with what's happening. They just know that something's wrong and that it doesn't feel right. And so by actually talking about racial literacy, aspects of racial literacy, and giving students the language and also giving them students the terminology so they know that what they're experiencing isn't something that's they're experiencing on their own, that it's real and that it's out there, is known to be a support to our students of color. So we're going to take just a minute here and go into breakout groups. And I actually, let me just take a look. I can't tell from where I am how many folks are with us. Oh, 19. So good. This is great. So we're going to do 4 different breakout groups. And we just want you to chat for just a moment. And my question to you is, what might be some reasons that having limited racial literacy, meaning not really knowing different aspects of the kinds of isms that are happening, or not really having the appropriate terminology, not even appropriate terminology, just not even having being able to label the things that are happening, why might that be problematic for our new teachers of color? Does that make sense? Okay, so Sarah posted my question over in the chat, and then when you get into breakout groups, we're going to come in and make sure that you have that as well. But we just want you to talk about it in a small group before we continue. And okay, you should all have an invitation now to join a breakout group. If you don't see an invitation, then you can go down to your control panel and you should see the option to join a breakout.
No, it's not giving us the option to.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't
No,
open
it
it.
did.
There
Okay.
you go. Thank you very much. Okay, I see folks are being able to find the breakout rooms. There they go. And then Sarah, if you want to join yours, and Maria, if you want to join yours, you can just give them the question in the chat and then come back and I'll move you to a different one, okay? I forgot to let them know how long, so I'm sending a message. It's just a quick 4-minute chat. And then Sarah, I forgot to tell people how long. So if you could also put in the chat 4 minutes, that would be helpful. And then okay, so Sarah, let me move you to a different room, okay? Which one were you in? Do you know? You're on mute. You were in 4? You were in 2. Okay, so I'm going to move you to. That's interesting. I don't see you. Okay, let me go find you. Sarah, move to 4. There you go. And Lisa, I have 2 Lisas. And Donita, are you having a hard time getting in? Sarah, you should see the option to move to 4. No? Okay, you're on mute, by the way.
I was trying to join a room, but then it added me twice here. That's weird.
Oh, how that's weird. Okay, let me see if I can move you, Sarah. Lisa, I'll put you into room 3.
It won't let me go. It's like there's traffic or something.
Yeah, everything's a little.
It won't let me go either. That's weird.
Yeah.
That's okay. I'll just stay here. I'm having technology anxiety. I'm like, oh.
Thank you, Danita. I think Danita isn't able to join a group, and but she did put something in chat, and I appreciate that, Danita. No worries.
Oh, that's frustrating. Yeah, I see her in room 4, but can't join. Yeah, I was having the same issue.
And if you go down to where it says, if you open up the 3 dots, there's no option there for breakout rooms or join breakout.
No.
Okay.
It said I can join, but then when I try to join, it doesn't let me. Same with Danita. That's
Yeah,
weird.
maybe because you're host.
Yeah, I guess so.
Be the case.
I thought I could join. But...
Yeah. And I have the sniffles, Lisa. I'm just going to run and grab a tissue.
No problem. I'm here.
Okay, that in group 4, we did see your broadcast message also.
Very good. Okie doke. Oh, so yeah. Okay. And I think Maria has stayed in the same room. So I'm wondering if I should move you to number 1. You can just check on it. You want to do that?
Sure.
Okay. There you go. I'm going to close it in a minute anyway. So here we go. I'm going to close in the room, 60 seconds.
Anita, that's interesting. Do you want to just talk with us, Anita?
She's having tech issues. Oh,
She's on mute. Okay.
yeah, but she did put some stuff in the chat.
Yeah, I saw that. And I thought that's interesting that it transfers to the students. Yeah, I can imagine.
Absolutely.
They're stressed and feeling,
Mhm.
hard to do this work if you're feeling like there's discrimination or racism that you're encountering. And I wonder how often the K-12 students express racism to their student teachers.
Honestly, Lisa, I have been pretty shocked by the focus groups that we've been doing. And I think you would even not just, and we're just doing it with our students in our graduate program. So
The comments that they're hearing and the things they're having to encounter. Yeah.
mhm.
Looks like most people are back.
Great. Absolutely great. Thank you so much. All right. So I'm wondering if anyone would like to share out from something that you talked about in your session. And you can either just go ahead and turn on your audio, or you can write something in the chat if you like. One student, Donita, one of our folks here who's with us today, talked about a couple of things. She mentioned over in the chat that when she observes student teachers of color, she said that she can actually see that their stress transfers to their students as well. So that's a really important point to make, Donita. We really appreciate that. And she also talked about making connections with other teachers of color, which is actually what we're talking about today, which is racial affinity grouping is absolutely important. And that I appreciate that too, that admin needs to step it up. That's awesome. So anyone else have comments from your discussion that you would like to share with the group? We would love to hear from you. Either in chat or in voice. Okay, great. Thank you, Eduardo. He talked about, and where are you, Eduardo? He talked about placing candidates with grads of the program who have the same mission and the intent, UCLA. I think that's really important too. Thank you. Appreciate that. All right, if there's no other comments, we're going to go ahead and move on. There's going to be plenty of opportunities for
Lisa, did you have a comment? Were you going to say something? You're on mute, so. Oh, sorry. I couldn't tell if you wanted to say something.
I did, if that's okay, ever so quickly. What I think I hear saying, and some of us get to practice, is the building of allyship muscles. And so the idea that you would either have a mentor who had gone before, or you would also be another student of color out of school, or you would have an affinity group. All of those echoes on site are what I think we've seen be useful. But this notion of literacy, I'm really interested in this, how we're defining that as a teacher supervisor, how I share out language, because it's across a lot of cultures. In my last cohort, I had 3 people from different parts of India, and that was its own very rich conversation. So it's a lot of so thank you. It's very interesting. I'll keep listening.
Awesome. We appreciate that. Thank you, Lisa. And I noticed that Sumita talked about it. Their group just started having a conversation and wanting to talk about racial literacy. And we will talk a little bit about that, but we draw heavily from the work of a couple of different authors. One is Rita Coley, who has done research on teachers of color. And so we use some of the language, and then also another text that we use is a great book called Creating a Home in Schools, and it's by a couple of folks from Washington, Francisco Rios and A. Longoria. So very good, but we will get into a little bit of that as we move on in our session today. Thank you. Awesome. Great. And then, all right, so there we go. Now Maria has the next slide for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Celeste. So yeah, so as Celeste described, racial affinity groups support educators of color to help them find connection, support, and inspiration. They provide a safe space for teachers of color to decompress and process the trauma that they experience from different things, from institutional racism, lack of sense of belonging, imposter syndrome, racial battle fatigue, disability battle fatigue, amongst other issues affecting them in the field. So as my colleagues and I embark on doing a study on the LIFT program, which you will learn a little more about in a few minutes, we are interested in assessing how the LIFT program serves as a racial affinity group and a healing space for scholars in the program, and whether scholars are developing healing-informed practices that they can incorporate into their teaching pedagogy. Dr. Farima Porkershot suggests that there is a need for teachers of color to reimagine their pedagogies of activism and resistance in their classrooms, and to collectively heal, right? And this is important for us because we really believe that in order for teachers to take care of their students, they need to be taken care of first in order to create meaningful relationships and transformational change with their students. They need to be able to have the space to safely share what they are going through, find the validation, and get the opportunity to heal from those traumatic experiences that they have been through. So because racial affinity groups create those support networks and they provide them the opportunity to heal, we are transforming the way that we operate, in the sense that we're moving towards a healing center framework of teaching rather than just trauma informed. And this is because individuals are more than the trauma that they experience. Not to say that trauma informed care is not important, but rather we're rethinking how we work with the teachers of color in the program as pre-service teachers, and thinking about how they will get to work with their students in the future once they are in their classrooms.
Thank you so much, Maria. Appreciate that. So now I'm going to talk about just our unfolding story at UC Santa Cruz and sort of where the idea came from for the LIFT project. And before we start, Sarah gets to tell you a little bit about the grant.
Yes, so LIFT in its official capacity over now the last 3 cohorts of the program has been made possible by a $3 million grant from the U.S. Department of Education that was given to our campus after a competitive application process in 2020 and 2021. So we have this grant through 2025, and the mission of the grant is to help the campus increase the readiness of Latinx, low income, and students of color from UCSC and also from Cal State Monterey Bay to apply to graduate programs and succeed in graduate programs once they are there. Our grant has 8 activities that you see listed here in this chart on the screen. 3 of them we associate as pathway interventions, which is activities for undergraduates on their way to hopefully graduate school and furthering their education and credentials. And then our other 5 activities as degree completion interventions, which is where LIFT fits in there as their activity. And just this past Saturday, Celeste and the team welcomed the newest cohort of LIFT scholars. So we have 15 more LIFT scholars, our 3rd cohort, to bring our total to 43. And we've been extremely pleased with the partnership with the education department and folks in this activity.
Great. Thank you so much, Sarah. I appreciate that overview of the larger project and the larger work that's happening on our campus. Okay, first of all, about our program, just super briefly, our program is intense and it's accelerated. In 12 months, students in our program earn both their master's degree as well as their preliminary credential. So it's very intense. It's really not for everyone. And oftentimes we do get students who have, additional things happening in their lives. They need to work, they have children, maybe they're a single parent. So we understand that our program it's challenging for everyone, but it's especially challenging for students who have additional challenges in their own lives. And then also we only offer 5 credentials, the 4 core subjects, math, science, English, and social studies, and then also multiple subjects, elementary credentials. So that's just a little bit about our program. So where did this work come from? We do an end of year survey, and there were certain hints. We weren't disaggregating our surveys initially by students of color and white students. However, some students would make comments in the end of year survey. We need more students of color in this program. We need more funding for students from marginalized group. And some students would go so far as to say, I didn't feel that I was in a safe space. I felt like I was attacked for my ideas, or I felt ignored. And frankly, the ignored comes up repeatedly, and it continues to come up. And some people felt that their identity was disregarded. And then there were also other comments where students maybe felt that they were singled out and expected to be the voice representing everyone from their culture, other things like that, but to a lesser degree. But so we were getting these hints, and we felt that we needed to get information a little bit more systematically. So we started end of program focus groups specifically for students of color to tell us about their experience, to give us feedback about their experiences as a student of color. We've also done some very targeted recruitment outreach, really letting students know that we're looking for students of color, that we welcome students of color. And we've also asked students what are their challenges, and we've tried to address many of those challenges. We spent some time over a couple of summers doing what we call cohesion and alignment. We talk about our program having a focus on equity, social justice, and anti-racism. So we developed some cohesion and alignment teams where we talked about the student experience across the 12 months of our program and talked about how we can keep those things at the front and center across the entire experience for our students. And we continue to do that cohesion and alignment work. And then last but not least, one of the things we did early on before we started the LIFT program is we really took a look at how we allocate our scholarship money. We used to actually score our applications and then give our scholarship money to the students who had the highest scores. And those would be things like grade point average and, the essay and things like that. But we realized that a lot of our scholarship money was going to white middle class students. And we thought, how can we redo that so we're actually getting our money to the students who need it most, our department scholarship money. So now we have a very different system, and we have some indicators. We can't ask people as graduate students, are you from a low income background? But there are certain indicators. So we do ask students what kind of financial aid they received as undergraduate students, which to us, it gives us an indication of whether or not they were from a low income household as an undergraduate student. And we have a couple of other ways to really try to identify students who might have higher financial need. And that's where our scholarship money goes to. One of the other things we do is we really reach out to students, letting them know that if we have any students who are undocumented or for any other reasons who are not eligible for federal student loans or federal financial aid. I also work with our CalTeach program to identify CalTeach students. Those are math and science and engineering undergraduate students who are coming into our program. We just encourage them to let us know what their situation is. And then we have one-on-one meetings with them and the financial aid office to ensure that they have sufficient funding to get through our program, because we know that the way that funding is allocated is not equitable and that it's not available to all students. So we try to make sure that we're addressing that as an issue. So I want to talk just very briefly about some of the feedback that we have been getting from our students of color. Before we started the LIFT program, they talked about their needs, and they felt like they really needed a space for networking with other students of color. They talked about wanting an affinity space where they can problem solve issues that are coming up, whether that's in their placement or in their classrooms or in their work on campus. But they also talked about really wishing that they had a mentor of color, a mentor teacher of color. And they also talked about needing help with writing. They talked about letting students know ahead of time that engaging in our program or being a student in our program is also a pretty important process of self-discovery, and that issues can come up. And we've heard this from many of our students, that they're really getting to revisit their own experience as a student of color in the K-12 system as they're learning about as they're learning in their various courses. And we talk about the social, political, and historical roots of education, as well as the current contexts. Interestingly, a lot of students felt that they were struggling, but didn't really feel like it was a safe thing to say that they needed some help. And last but not least, they talked about wanting all of our instructors and fellow students to understand their own biases, and then to also have the language to name those kinds of biases. So this is just a smattering of some of the feedback that we've gotten over the maybe 5 years that we've been doing focus groups for our students of color. So that led us to the creation of this Latinx Initiative for Future Teachers program. So we invite students to apply to our program. It's a very simple application. We try to make it as welcoming and as unburdensome as possible. And we try to address some of those requests that students had. So we do an additional orientation for our students of color, where they can come in a smaller group, not all students of color, I'm sorry, for our Latinx students, actually the ones who apply and get accepted to our program. We give them an additional scholarship. It's not a lot of money, but it is something, it's on top of other funding that they're receiving, but it's an additional $2,000 scholarship that's coming from the program. We give them an additional mentor. So in addition to their cooperating teacher, in addition to their teacher supervisor, they get a mentor teacher of color who's really there to help them navigate being a student of color in our program, and to also help them deal with any kind, and just give them guidance on, how to address issues as they're coming up, whether that's in their classes or in their placement. It's a safe place to ask questions. Oftentimes the mentors will come to us and just ask really simple questions, like students are wanting, this information, or they're wanting to know what to do next. I think students feel much more comfortable asking their mentor teachers what we might consider real simple or real basic questions that they're just not comfortable going to anyone else about. And then the mentors can get that information from us and take it back. And what we have been doing in previous years has also been putting on a speaker series. We had Rochelle Gutierrez coming and talking about equity and ways to sort of take ownership of education and resist racism in classrooms. And then we also had Rita Coley come, and various other folks have come to present to us. So that's been really an exciting part of the program. And then, so now we're getting feedback specifically from students who are in our program. And so far, and like I said, it's still unfolding for us. We're still figuring out how to do this, and we really want your input. We really want to know what other folks are doing in their programs. But what students tell us is working for them, and these are our LIFT scholars, they're telling us that they really appreciate having the additional funding. They really appreciate the whole group socials that we have, and we don't have many. We tend to do the smaller group mentoring sessions, and so it's something that we are going to use that feedback and do things differently in the coming year. But they've really appreciated those whole LIFT scholar socials that we do. And then our single subject cohorts have been telling us that they ended up in their LIFT group finding a nice bonded group where they really support one another and feel like they've found a home where they can talk about issues related to racism. And we did not get that same feedback from our multiple subjects. However, I think that they just had a harder time finding times to meet. There were different struggles. It wasn't so much that anything about the mentorship, is really just more logistical. They were very busy. So in a way, attending additional meetings with their mentor felt more like a burden than it felt like a support. So ongoing challenges that we have are scheduling meetings, and also some students not necessarily feeling a strong connection to their LIFT scholar group, mentoring group. So we're trying to address those in the coming year. So we're actually revamping our mentoring. So one of the things that we did is we've already given students every date that they're going to meet this year. So instead of leaving it up to the mentors to try to find times that students can meet, we looked at everyone's very busy schedules and set those times. And we also decided that we're all going to meet, whenever we have our mentoring sessions, we're going to start by meeting as a group. We're going to include food. It's going to make it social, but we're also at each one of those meetings going to present one of the topics about racial literacy so that we can talk about it as a group, really helping to give students that language if they don't already have it. However, many of our students are brilliant and they come with us. come to us with really strong knowledge of racial literacy and the language that they that will really be supportive of them. So one of the so here's the topics that we're going to be talking about in trying to support students' racial literacy. And this is what I know a number of you have been talking about, but we're really drawing heavily from the Rita Coley book. And so one of the topics we're going to talk about is her first chapter, which is the racialization of teachers of color. And it's really just about, trying to understand what we mean by race and how it's really socially constructed. Then we're going to do the next topic is going to be the impact of being in a hostile racial climate, which many of our students encounter. Certainly not all students and certainly not everywhere, but basically just talking about, the impact that being in hostile racial situations has on them as students of color. And it's much what Sara talked about earlier, just the stress, the added stress that causes. And then we're going to talk about how to survive and how to resist. And it's a lot of those things like forming your own network of support, finding allies, etc. And then talking about, one of the strategies is really reimagining a future education that is full of hope and full of positive support for all students. And then finally, her final chapter is supporting teachers of color. So that's what those are the 5 big meetings that we're having this year. And between those meetings, we have smaller group sessions that are much shorter in duration. So we're trying to make it so that our program doesn't feel like a burden to students, that it really feels like it's full of joy, a place to connect with others and a place to get support. So those are our plans for the coming year. So now we want to move into some discussion activities where we're going to pose some topics for all of us to discuss. One of the articles that I draw from when I think about racial literacy and supporting students to develop racial literacy is an article that I'm just going to give you the title, and it's not necessarily we don't discuss the whole article, but I do draw from this article to get topics of racial literacy. And it's called Ways that Well-Meaning White Teachers Bring Racism into Our Schools by James Utt. But what I do like about this particular article is that it brings up topics of racial literacy. I think that it really does support students in providing language to help them understand some of their own experiences, if they don't already have it. But like I said, a lot of our students come to us with very strong knowledge. One topic is essentializing, which means characterizing people within a culture as having an essential quality. And I think you can all probably think of examples is maybe all Latinx students, blah, 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 or all Black students, blah, 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 or you need to be mindful of blah, blah, blah. So it's really saying that there's some essential quality of a particular group. And so when students have an understanding of what that is, we feel it gives them some language so that they can actually notice it, but then also having the language to be able to talk about it, whether that's with a safe peer group or whether that's with the person who is actually doing it. Okay, so what we're going to do now is go back into our breakout groups. And what we would like you to do is talk about the topic of essentializing. Have you had any related experiences that you would say is an example of essentializing, whether that's a personal experience yourself or whether it's something that you've observed? And I'll just give you an example. I've personally observed this. I'm actually seeing an instructor say to their students, you have to be really careful so that you don't have to, you can't force your Latinx students to look you in the eye because it's not a part of their culture and that makes them uncomfortable. So he's essentially saying that there's this essential quality of all Latinx students, which is really inappropriate because we know that there's a lot of different Latinx cultures. There isn't just a single one, and that we can't really say that there's some quality that applies to all people with any group anyway. So in any case, please talk about whether or not you have any related personal experiences. And then also a second part of your conversation would be, okay, let's say you either observe that happening or it's happening to you as an individual, or you actually observe it happening to your students, your K-12 students. or it's observing happening with your student teacher. But let's just talk about what would be a healthy response that keeps everyone safe. So what's a health, safety and safe response? So we're going to go into breakout groups. I know that Sara pasted the discussion questions or the discussion guidelines over in the chat already. Thank you very much, Sara. And then we will come into your chat rooms into your breakout rooms as well. And okay, thanks, Lisa. It looks like this is going to be our only topic here. Darn. So we're going to only have 4 minutes to talk about this in your breakout room. And so we'll do that and then we'll just come back, but we'd like to at least get the conversation started. Okay, thank you. I was so worried. That's what I thought, Sara. We have a few more minutes than that. I think that we will probably only be able to do this one breakout group though, but we will go into breakout groups and we're going to give you, we have until 12:10. So we're going to give you a good 10 minutes to be in great breakout groups to discuss this. And then we'll close by just sharing some other topics that you might, that are related to racial literacy, but I do highly recommend going to the article because it has a lot of great topics that can be discussed and shared with students as well. All righty, so we're moving into breakouts. No, we'll use the same breakout rooms, okay? And I would love it, Maria and Sara, if you would do the same thing, which is go into the breakout rooms and paste in the discussion again. Thank you. And anyone, if you have a hard time getting into a breakout, just let me know. Helen, are you able to see the breakout option? You are, good, okay, no. Okay, let me see what I can do. I'm gonna assign you to room 2. Okay, you should.
Got it.
Okay, awesome, thank you. Maria, are you good? Do you see an option to go into a room?
Yes, and I do believe that everybody has access to the question.
Oh, they do? Okay, awesome. Thank you. Okay, so 10 minutes. I'm putting on my timer.
Yeah, sorry. I, for some reason, thought it was.
No,
Sorry to
you did scare me. I'm like, ah.
Sorry.
Well, that's okay. We're not going to get as far as we thought, but we never do, right?
Never. It's. Well, this is really interesting.
Thank you. I just think it's something to talk about. I have to share with you, Lisa, that I'm really surprised. Every year we talk to our students about our own biases and making sure blah, blah, blah. And yet at the end of the year, I will always have a couple of students who said, you know, I really felt more comfortable in breakout groups in my classes or in small groups in my classes with students of color because I felt like the white students, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I just think it's invisible. And so
I think people are just so not aware of the little messages and the little
very subtle
microaggressions, right? I know that's overused, but like.
Well, that's exactly actually what we're talking about.
Yeah. It happens more than we realize. And part of it is people aren't even aware they're doing it, you know, because it's so much a part of like, what? I'm not. Don't have that awareness, so.
Okay, I'm going to set this for
I wish I could join a room, but I'm scared to try to join.
Yeah, I agree. I'm kind of out of my Zoom land. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know what happened last. I guess maybe, you know what I was doing? I was going through and changing a lot of my Zoom settings to make sure it's sort of, oh, let me actually.
Great. I think we're all back now. I appreciate it. What I'd like you to do is take a minute and just share something in chat, something important that came up from your conversation. And I'm inviting everyone to write a comment in chat so that everyone can hear from everybody. So I will read some of them out, but please do share something from your conversation over in the chat. And it really can be anything that you found useful from your conversation. Smita asked me to put the article in the resource folder. So right now we have our slide presentation in there. I will add the article, and we're also going to add the video of this session today. Thank you for the idea. And also thank you, Lisa. She talked about respectfully checking. I think that's really a really key idea. Eduardo says he asked if if a BIPOC candidate said, I don't want to work with a white teacher because of blank, is this essentializing? Oh, you posed that, Eduardo, to your group. That would be a great 1 hour discussion question in itself. I don't have a response for that, but I hope you had a chance to talk about in your group. And Dr. Taylor talked about folks needing to feel valued even when they make a mistake. Such a great point. Lisa mentioned leaving space to be wrong. Interesting. Thank you for that. We actually talked about that at our orientation on Tuesday for our incoming cohort. Thank you for that. Dana talked about, again, the new term respectfully checking. Thank you. And Smita said that her group talked about finding common experiences among a group of students to in order to teach a large group. Very important. And I also think, Smita, just talking about what we talked about in the orientation yesterday was, or maybe it was 2 days ago, we talked about really that we're all here with some shared values and some shared purposes, and that's what we have in common, even though we all come to this with different backgrounds and different experiences. Awesome. And then Angela talked about the professor. She applauds the professor who, with the way she handled 2 teacher candidates who made some of the most appalling comments to her. I'd like to hear about that. Sounds cool. And then Lisa wants to give credit to Vanessa Zapeda. Thank you so much. All right, good. And so we're going to quickly move through our last slides just so you know the topics that we were going to be talking about today. And so Maria is going to talk to us very briefly about tokenizing, which is another topic in racial literacy that we feel it's important for students to have under their belts.
Yeah, so tokenizing students' cultures to connect with them. And this alludes to making only perfunctory or symbolic efforts to be inclusive of members of minority groups in classrooms, curriculum materials, especially by including a small number of people from underrepresented groups in order to give the appearance, right, of social or gender equality. And so this comes like at a very surface level, not really to actually be inclusive and trying to work with students to address their needs, but rather just to get something in exchange and make a like a kind of like a what do they call it, like a performance as to what you're trying to do, but not having the right intentions behind it. So that is tokenizing.
Thank you so much, Maria. And then also Evelyn put a really important comment over in the chat that I'd like to invite everyone to read. Super important. I can't really summarize it for you. Evelyn, you want to just go off mute and share with us really quickly?
Yeah, sure. Now, as a woman of color, I struggle with this a lot. Like, I know my own identity, but I also know that my experiences are uniquely my own. Even though as an Asian American woman, I have shared commonalities with other Asian American women, especially Asian American immigrant women. And so I can't speak on behalf of all my people. But that's not to say, I mean, and I can't even essentialize my own people. But I do recognize that there are shared experiences that we need to recognize. But at the same time, we need to make sure that we recognize that they're individual stories within a common narrative.
That's so well said. And I so much appreciate you speaking out. Thank you, Evelyn. Really appreciate that. And then super briefly, Sarah's going to talk about the use of racially coded language.
So using racially coded language, this could be referring to students as ghetto, parents as tiger moms, or saying about parents, right? If only they cared about their students' education, if their kids' education. These are some examples of ways in which we introduce racially coded language that devalues others or otherizes them to begin with, whether the students or their families. Also within this category, something that is perhaps quite common is in the terms of white teachers and teaching in urban areas, for example, is treating our students as inspiration or when talking to other white people about what we're doing and where we're doing it, you know, why you're doing it for them and the ways they inspire you because of their perceived otherness or less than.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I appreciate that. And so finally, we just want to invite you to be thinking about how some of these ideas might integrate with your work in supervising teachers and in supporting your teachers of color, because we know, absolutely know, that their experience is not going to be the same. The world does not react to them, treat them in the same way that they teach non-students of color. And so we just invite you to just come to, you know, really seriously think about the experiences of your students of color. And I love the term that a couple of folks talked about. I think it was to respectfully check in with students in a way that where they don't feel pressured. And I would just think that would be such a great topic of conversation. So we thank you for coming to our session today. And with that, oops. Let me stop this. Sorry. I apologize. With that, we just want to thank you for coming to our session today. Our time is up. Thank you. We hope you have a lovely day.
Thank you. We'll be coming back together at 12:40 for the next set of sessions. Go relax, stretch, re-energize, get ready for the final sessions. Thank you so much, Celeste, Maria, and Sarah, for sharing.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Lisa, for putting on this amazing conference and having a chance for us to all get together to talk about supporting our pre-service teachers. Thank you all. Have a great day. Thank you, Anna. Appreciate it. Bye. Thanks, Evelyn. So nice to see you. And Samita, Vanessa. Thank you all. Nice to meet you too, Helen.
Hey, Lisa, I want to make sure that I can come back and enter the right breakout room, because I had the timing wrong. And so I want to make sure I just come back to this landing page, and then I can go on and go into the next session.
Let me put in the chat the next few sessions. There's one, that's 3A, and then I'll do 3B.
Okay.